Welcome, everybody, to the Empowerment Toolkit. I'm your host, Claire Chancellor, and this mini course is all about giving you the tools to free yourself from stress and those heavy duty limiting emotions. Now, I've got to let you know that as I'm recording this, I live in a forest and there is a fair bit of bird noise. If I waited for Mother Nature to stop making a noise, I would never hit record. So let's do this together. I also want to let you know that this particular recording, I'm going to be recording the entire course. So if you're somebody like me who loves those audiobooks, hit play, listen to the whole thing, then this is for you. Alternatively, in the course, there's the videos, so you can get to see me chat in all the chapters. So, welcome to your transformative journey. I have specifically designed this to help you take control, release limiting emotions, and reclaim your personal power. This mini course is your toolkit for self discovery, offering practical steps to free yourself from that heavy stress and to be able to open that door and step into a life filled with ease and confidence. With years of experience under my belt as a master coach, master NLP trainer, I've been able to empower countless clients to break free from what's been holding them back. And now, what I've done is I've cherry picked and grabbed all of the good stuff and put it into this mini course so that you have the opportunity to apply these techniques for yourself at your own pace to be able to get the results that you want. This process is simple, yet incredibly powerful. And in fact, it's actually taught all over the world. I've even written a book about it. I love how this process works. So, well, before I get ahead of myself, in this mini course, what you're going to gain is that clarity and emotional freedom. So, you'll be able to uncover and navigate those emotional triggers. You'll be able to navigate those limiting beliefs, the patterns, and the stress that have been holding you back from that personal growth. You're going to be able to build your self worth and confidence through actionable tools and strategies. This is about sustainable growth. So, this is about putting the power in your hands to be able to take yourself through the process, go through the specifically designed trigger response questionnaire, and also the questionnaire about planning what you want to create for your future. So, there's a lot jam packed into this little course. So, through this mini course, you'll develop the skills to guide yourself through the process without relying on those quick fixes or needing external validation. By the end of this course, you're going to feel better, more confident, and ready to take on life with renewed sense of self-assurance. This isn't so much about eradicating all stress. This is about building that confidence to know that whatever comes your way, you've got the tools to come back to center, feeling self assured, confident, and pretty much ready to take on your world. So let's get started. Let's get a little bit playful here. I want you to think about the future that you want to create. If you're driving, don't close your eyes. But if you are in the position where you can close your eyes, I just invite you to close your eyes, allowing yourself to open your front door to the life that you want. And as that door is open, what do you notice? Who are the people around you? What do you say to yourself? What does your life look like? For some people, that dream life might be owning a beautiful home, free from the burden of a mortgage. Somebody's future vision might be in that beautiful, loving relationship filled with love, laughter, and unforgettable adventures. Perhaps it's a home filled with children, play, laughter, just that hum of family life. Maybe it's leaving a lasting legacy through your business, inspiring people, and being in that community that is so uplifting. And then there's that allure of travel, discovering breathtaking places, embracing unique experiences, and truly living each and every moment to the fullest. Now, while you've got a snapshot of that, just coming back to this present moment and just getting in touch with how incredible it feels, knowing that that's possible. But let's be honest, how do you feel knowing that you're not there yet? That it hasn't been manifested yet? Some people may feel frustrated, doubtful, stuck, and those feelings make sense. Your intuition is telling you that there's something in the horizon that you want, and yet the limiting emotions put on the brakes that no longer serve you to be able to create that. So instead of feeling stressed and overwhelmed by money, cost of living, career tensions, or family pressures, instead of having to deal with all of that heaviness and the burnout and the tiredness and the insecurity that come with it, I mean, I can hear myself start to talk faster because it's like, oh, this energy is so heavy. But I can tell you, we can definitely shift those limiting emotions, especially here with the Empowerment Toolkit, so that instead of feeling insecure, you're looking towards the future with that sense of confidence, possibility, and open to what's coming. Now, the magic happens when you step into that light energy, because the more empowered you feel, the easier it is to attract in and radiate those opportunities, those moments that you can just say, yes. And believe me, I have seen this time and time again with my beautiful clients. Many clients come to me feeling stuck, overwhelmed by challenges, weighed down by stress, and operating from a mindset that's just shaped by limitations. And it's natural to feel that way. Life's gonna, make it really difficult to have that grit and those challenges to for you to have that personal growth. But coaching meets you where you are, offering a compassionate and supportive space to be able to shift that grit and heaviness into that sense of empowerment, shoulders back, head held high. And I know firsthand, I have seen clients transition from being the renting person stuck, paycheck to paycheck, to become that proud homeowner. I've witnessed clients going from the struggle of paying off a mortgage to very, very quickly becoming debt free. I've witnessed clients overcome business uncertainty to create that thriving or reputable career. And in fact, I see them thriving on Instagram and like, wow, wow. Instagram, social media, YouTube, all the things. My clients are everywhere, and I love, love, love seeing what they've been creating. I've witnessed clients go from that broken heart, the breakup, and all of the mess that comes with it, to be able to release that hurt, learn from the past, and then manifest in that beautiful co creating, loving partnership. One of my favorite things to help a client work through is that chronic health issues and step into that vibrant wellness because, oh my goodness, when they feel good, their relationships get better, their careers get better, their self esteem goes through the roof. And I've also seen clients rise from retail to then being their own renowned, successful business owner. I've seen clients like that time and time again, have those franchises and be very well known in their industry. So coaching meets you where you're at, collapses those limitations, and then helps you open the door to step into that future that you previously just explored to be able to create that into reality. So the question is, how did they achieve these remarkable outcomes? Well, it all begins with addressing the limiting emotions that often stall the progress and dim the light on the future that they want for themselves. So it begins with getting real and addressing those limiting emotions. And it can be uncomfortable at the beginning, but when you know that you are no longer going to put up with that heaviness, it's like, no, my future is absolutely dependent on this. It's like, yes, it makes it so much easier. I like to consider the process of coaching a little bit like Back to the Future, the epic movie. And it's like a perspective shift to be able to rewrite life scripts. So it's like going back into the past to work out where did those limitations come from, be able to get a different perspective. What were you ignoring, or what didn't you take in, or how did you step into survival instead of thriving? All the things. And I'm going to talk about that more as we move ahead. But it really is like that beautiful movie, Back to the Future, going back, rewriting things so that stress fades away, frustration transforms into ease, and insecurity blossoms into confidence. With that emotional freedom, opens up that flow of effortless manifesting solutions that once felt impossible. It all becomes quite clear. To reach this point, to be able to create that vision, we must face those limiting emotions that are creating the resistance, and they are there serving you. So we really need to explore the stress, the doubt, the fear, and rather than battling them, it's listening to their insights. We're going to release those limiting emotions to create space for the good things waiting to unfold. Growth takes time, and like anything worth building, start with that solid foundation. That's exactly what this toolkit is, to be confident enough to explore those emotional triggers, to explore what are the limiting emotions telling you, and then being able to create the space for new wonderful things to come in. Now, I've got to say, you definitely hold the key to be able to change this. I have seen clients come in where they're feeling quite broken, they're blaming everybody, they're making excuses, they have every reason to hold on to the suffering. And I've got to tell you, from that first introductory session, it's like, mm, they're getting so much out of being the victim, so much attention and feeling significant for the amount of trauma and pain that they've been into, that they kind of white knuckle and grab hold of that identity that life has hit them hard, and now they're gaining what they want from suffering. And I've got to tell you, those particular clients are definitely not my clients. My clients are incredibly decisive. They know that, yes, life has hit them hard, they've gone through chapters of suffering, but they are driven to move beyond that. They've got a curious mind and they're like, okay, life's brought this up for a reason. Why did I attract this? What is there to learn? Because once I get that aha moment, that closure, that clarity, I can then turn that into just that sense of achievement. So you've got to check in with yourself. How much are you gaining from that old victim story? And how much are you willing to actually step into, I don't know, like what's coming to mind is like that professional athlete is like, no matter what, I'm getting up, I'm doing the training. I want that winning opportunity. So definitely check in. Where are you on that scale? Because the key is definitely in your hands. It just depends on which direction you want to go. Are you motivated by your pain, or are you motivated towards that pleasure, that wonderful, beautiful life that you want? Now, here's the here's the truth. Most people don't actually know how to solve stress. And that's why you might hear advice like you just got to let it go, you'll be fine. Back in the day, if somebody's like, "Oh, you just got to let it go, Claire," I would spin out more on that than the actual issue I was previously stressing about. And I knew there was an answer to why I was feeling the way that I was feeling, and yet people really didn't have the solution. You've got to keep in mind when you're on that personal growth journey that as you start to feel lighter, you're going to start to change the dance. And as you start to check in with people about some of the issues that you're going through, your issues are going to trigger other people's insecurities, right? You know, those moments where you've got this problem, somebody's like, okay, you just got to let it go, you'll be fine, you know, surrender. Oh, I hate that one, surrender. Um, because honestly, they don't know how to help. There are so many different holistic tools to manage stress. There's all of this mainstream system and noise about, doing all the work, showing up to mental health plans and counseling and psychologists and all the things. And I know from witnessing clients that when you step into that space, a lot of that is organized around the system's control, profit, and rigid structures. And they often want to build up what they call like that scaffold. So you can spend a lot of time in the first few sessions for the psychologist, the counselor, that mainstream health system just to get to know you. And that can take weeks and months. And that drives me bananas. No, definitely serves a purpose. Definitely gives people the relief they need at the time when they need it. But if you're somebody who's like, okay, but I don't want this to take such a long time, then you may want to explore coaching, NLP, and other modalities. Because the old system, that mainstream health system, frequently asks you to retell your story. How do you feel about it? Without offering any tools to actually manage it. They seem to have this assumption that yes, you've got the tools within you, but they don't actually offer the strategy or the process to resolve and dissolve what you've come in for. So it's about exploring, unpacking, and again, it's got its place. But as a quick example, counseling may teach you to manage your stress. If you were going on a flight to travel, they may teach you how to breathe and how to be mindful and to how to, tap your feet on the ground. Like they will teach you a variety of different things to manage that stress. Whereas techniques, again, NLP, coaching, definitely offers the solution that we go back to when that stress or that anxiety about traveling first came into you, or flying, I should say, and resolve it. Blast it out of blast it out of your nervous system. If you're somebody who wants me to use softer metaphors, it's just like getting that old program to fade away so that you can get onto that flight. You're not managing it. You get to enjoy your travel and show up to your destination feeling light and free and wonderful instead of having that barrier in front of you. So I've waffled on plenty here, can really push my buttons with the difference between how easy some of the solutions are versus how the mainstream profits from people suffering and they look like they're the solution, and yet they can sometimes prolong the problem by, how do you feel? So again, I want to put the control back into your hands to be able to support that inner work, building your self worth and that personal freedom. Because that foundation, when you know how to tap into what's going on and listen to your body, listen to those emotions, this foundation creates the space for fulfilling relationships, financial success, and those meaningful opportunities. So I'm definitely talking above and beyond those quick fixes. This empowerment toolkit takes a unique approach. So instead of relying on quick fixes, we'll focus on uncovering the root cause of your stress. To move forward, we'll begin by looking back, by examining and addressing the patterns and beliefs that have been fueling the stress. You'll find the clarity and confidence to move forward in a more empowering way. So this isn't about surface level solutions or simply managing stress. It's about going deeper and understanding the stress and what it represents. A little bit like that smoke alarm. It is signaling something and we need to pay attention. Instead of just putting a pillow over the fire alarm, we need to actually address what is going on. So we're going to turn inward and explore that stress's role and all the limiting emotions, frustration, guilt, all the things, and release that to be able to uncover the path of that self-trust and lasting confidence. It's interesting to think about. Stress is more than just a feeling. It's your mind and body's natural response to life's challenges. And it arises when our mind fixates on problems, but also struggles to find a solution. If you have that problem in front of you, knew the solution, go take the steps, there really isn't any stress there, right? So there's two-way thing going on here. There's a problem and a struggle to find the solution. Stress can originate from many sources, work pressure, relationships, health concerns, money worries, even moving house. But it's interesting to note that there are two key types of stress. There's that short-term stress, and this can actually enhance your performance, focus, and energy. And then there's a long-term stress that, if left unmanaged, can harm your health and well-being. In moments of stress, it can feel like that internal tug of war. One part of you wants to move forward, while the other part hesitates, unsure what to do. It's as if one foot is on the accelerator and one's on the brake, and they're both being pushed at the same time, creating a lot of smoke and a lot of noise. And it's just like, oh, this is so unhealthy. Now, during these times when you're feeling stressed, your inner child, that vulnerable part of you, may emerge with questions like, why is this happening to me? Or what should I do? Looking around to everybody else, how could I solve this? Looking for reassurance. And so it's this internal conflict that leaves you stuck and perpetuates that cycle of stress. And let's face it, when stress strikes, all we want to do is for it to go away. I just want my clarity. I just want my closure. I just want to go back to a sense of calm. And that's the thing. With greater self-awareness and clarity, you can transcend all of that stress. You don't have to manage it anymore. It's now behind you. And you can have that confidence, that knowing that it's not going to hold you back. Now, in this mini course, it's definitely designed to address that long-term stress and those limiting emotions. Those ones, the stress that persists and weighs you down, like frustration, fear, anger, overwhelm, all the things. They keep you in that trapped cycle of tension and doubt. And I've got to say, it does signal that there's a loss of that personal power to external influences. And I really want to go into more depth with you on that particular topic. So when these limiting emotions arise, when your mind and your inner child start to grapple with unanswered questions like, what is the solution? What do I do? It starts to grow louder as your unconscious mind seeks clarity to understand what is going on. So, by reframing these limiting emotions as actually questions rather than obstacles or barriers, when you see these limiting emotions as questions, you can start to open the door to those meaningful solutions. And this shift in how we see problems and stress gives us the tools and that insight into being able to understand what's beneath the surface of this stress. So if you have the workbook in front of you, you'll see common examples of what I'm talking about, but here I'll go through it with you anyway. So these questions from the inner child are going to come up in a way that it is seeking to be seen, heard, and valued. So there's that inner child, that part of you that's craving to be soothed, something outside of yourself. Please help, please understand, please bring in compassion, please know that I matter. And so again, this empowerment process opens the door to be able to get those answers for yourself. When we acknowledge that when we were a child, we had to conform to our parents, or our caregivers. We had to do what they wanted. And we had to adjust ourselves to keep the peace or to adjust ourselves to get our needs met. And so some of those programs and those old ways of being us are like computer programs. They will come up to the system anytime that you're feeling stressed. It's like you revert back to being a child because it worked back then. But as adults, we have the ability to reclaim our inner strength and make more conscious decisions. We can offer ourselves the reassurance that we once sought from others. And so rather than rather than allowing the inner child to hold the steering wheel of our lives, we can actually take charge. It's like, buddy, I've got this. Like, take the back seat. I'm in charge. I'll help lead the way. And so it's not about isolating yourself and like, okay, I've got that self-trust, self-confidence. I don't need anybody. But it is about claiming that inner strength and confidence that, again, no matter what comes up, you've got the tools to deal with it. So I go through the list of emotions here. I've got shame, guilt, judgment, fear, and anger. When I'm coaching people, I know that shame is all about measuring up to other people's expectations. In my mind, I often see like a ruler and, a teacher saying, like, you've got to measure up, you've got to come up to this level. And the inner child is like looking up at that ruler, going, oh my gosh, that is such a high expectation. What do I have to do to earn your acceptance or your praise? And in my mind, when I'm working with clients, when we collapse that ruler, when we get that teacher or whoever it is to step back and fade out, there is no more external expectations or standards. It's about what you want, right? It changes the game very, very quickly so that, like, where does the shame go if you're not trying to meet other people's expectations? Guilt? Oh, guilt. If you're a people pleaser and an empath, people will use your guilt against you. So guilt is, I've done something wrong. And I say this with compassion. People pleasers and empaths and recovery of all of those. Guilt is all about your values, what's important to you. And if you have a value for fairness, a value for loyalty, then you're playing by very different rules to other people who don't actually value fairness. They say they do, but it's not in their top three, right? And so if you've got a value for things to be fair and just and harmonious, then people who know this about you can use guilt against you to make you feel guilty that you're not doing the thing that you said you would do. And it's like, well, wait a minute. The other person is living to very different rules. So the inner child often asks, how can I make this right to restore balance? And you might have seen that growing up. Uh, I think of growing up, me and my brother having that tub of ice cream, and there was one tub of ice cream, and Mum would do the shopping once a week, and I would make sure that I would take my little portion and make sure that everybody had some. And then my little brother would be like, "Everybody? What everybody? I'm going to take the big bowl." And I'm like, that's not fair. My guilt would make me, take the smaller piece. And neither one is right or wrong. I'm just saying that you got to check in with when it comes to guilt. It's like according to whose rules. Now we move to judgment. Judgment's an interesting one. Judgment's that lens of what is right and what is wrong. So we've got that scale. Somebody's right, somebody's wrong. There's a polarity here, the black and white, love and hate. Now, anybody who's on their spiritual growth will start to recognize that when you move into that polarity of what's right and wrong, then you get caught in other people's judgments, other people's heavy energy. And I would require my clients to actually rise above the judgment and just to observe, like, oh, isn't that interesting? Because the ultimate question here about judgment is like the guilt is like, according to whose rules? The inner child will be saying, what do I have to change about myself to be right by you? And that's an interesting thing. If we looked at multiple cultures, somebody's rightness about Christmas is going to be different to somebody with a different culture, different religion. So the right and the wrong, it's flexible. It's not a fixed human thing. I mean, unless we're going into like the natural laws of, I'm not even going to go there. But the judgment piece, the judgment is coming back to being right or wrong. And again, handing your power over to somebody else to tell you you're not living to their rules. Fear, oh, I felt that kick in the guts then. Fear is anchored in the perception around safety and autonomy. And ultimately, the inner child is saying, what do I need to do so you consider me too valuable to harm? What do I need to do for you to consider me too valuable to harm? So there's a level of fear, maybe somebody's yelling, angry, making a big noise, smashing dishes. And it's like, what do I need to do? I'm fearful. Like, what do I need to do to make sure that I'm seen as valuable so you won't harm me? And you get out of their way and do all the things. But the fear, again, says that there's a threat outside of you. And like this, if somebody's seen like a spider, we're not so much worried about the spider as much as we're worried about what we're telling ourselves about the spider. If it jumps on me and um, and again, we can contrast that to someone like David Attenborough, who would be intrigued by the spider, respectfully intrigued, whereas other people would be freaking out. So the fear comes back to the story that we're telling ourselves, comes back to questioning our value, all the things. And finally, here, anger. Oh, I love working with anger, especially with empaths and people pleasers. They do anger by crying. I can put my hand up for that one too. Instead of the loud outbursts, they will do crying. The anger is just like it's got to go somewhere and it comes out as tears. The anger is a secondary emotion and it always follows powerlessness. So somebody outside of you is threatening your boundaries or your territory, and it's like no matter what I say in a calm voice, you're not going to pay attention to me. And yet the anger gets people's attention, gets them to stop. Even the tears get people to stop, take notice, or the loudness gets people to stop, take notice. And so the inner child is asking, what do I need to give up for you to back off and leave me alone? Where in coaching, working through anger, I'm not actually going to I'm not going to address anger. I'm going to undress what's underneath the anger. I'm going to say to the client in that moment when you felt anger, what was just before that? And it always comes back to somebody overstepping a boundary, always. So it's fascinating, right? When you can start to unpack emotions as questions, you can start to actually address the root cause of what's going on instead of the surface level. So I've just mentioned anger and said, yeah, it's the result. It's a secondary emotion. It follows something else. Something else got triggered. And that's what I want to talk about now is the emotional triggers. So emotional triggers, if you take yourself back to a recent time where you were on your merry way, somebody said something or didn't say something, and then there's that rush of energy. That emotional trigger is powerful, non-logical. It's definitely that charged body response. And it's highlighting that there's an unresolved issue here. So there's a piece of the puzzle that's just flipped out, and we need to work out what's going on, how to fit it, what's going on here. So in those moments when you feel emotionally triggered, this is your body signaling something. Now, it can manifest as a physical sensation like the racing heart, a sick feeling in your stomach, a dry mouth, or even that sense of panic. These reactions are frequently then followed by the label that we give it. So we're going to start to name that reaction. We're going to say, oh, that's my fear, judgment, shame, guilt, anxiety. You're going to label that. And it's a very logical process there to say, oh my gosh, like my heart's racing, I must be anxious. And yet, if I went on a roller coaster with my daughter, my heart would be racing in fear, in anxiety to go on that roller coaster. My daughter's heart would be racing in absolute excitement. So there is a logical part here about what we label our feelings, and therefore we can also interrupt what's going on. And again, I'm going to go into more detail about that. So these emotional triggers are your unconscious mind sending you an alert. And when working to resolve the stress and limiting emotions, it's essential to pay attention to those body signals. So they're warning you that someone may be stepping into, or that you may be stepping into a situation that you just don't need. So, for instance, when clients come to me for personal coaching to resolve anxiety, I often ask them, okay, how do you do anxiety? And I've got to say, 9 times out of 10, the client thinks that I've mispronounced the question, misphrased the question. It surprises them. That's exactly what I want for them to do. I want them to be a little bit shocked when I ask that question. How do you do anxiety? Because when we identify ourselves with that label of depression or anxiety, that identity is like our name. We, we will defend it. It becomes who we are. And creating that space, stepping out of the anxiety to almost look at a movie in your mind of how do you do anxiety starts to create the space for change. Our nervous system loves that. It loves to be able to create that space. So we can then look at, what did you see? What did you hear? What did you feel just before you had that anxious response? How do you do anxiety? Did you have to see something, hear something, feel something? And did it go to your heart or did it go to your gut? Like, tell me more about how do you do anxiety? And it's interesting when I taught this particular process. This is a strategy elicitation in NLP. When we teach this to wellness practitioners, it's a game changer for them. Some people will assume that if you say, oh, I'm anxious, it means I'm going back to bed and cuddling into the doona. And I know for myself, if I'm anxious, if something's, come up another layer, um, I'm going to I'm going to want to move the body. The bed is not the place where I want to go and zone out. I'm going to need to move the body to get the anxiety out of the system. So, how do you do anxiety? How do you do judgment? How do you do guilt? How do you do shame? It gives you a snapshot of how your body responds, and then it creates the space for you to be able to do that self inquiry. Go, okay, interesting. Just by seeing that thing or hearing someone say that, do I have to now go into the inner child and create anxiety, or can I now choose something different? So, to summarize that, the emotions, for those who love the science, emotions are your body's physical reaction to something, the racing heart when you see someone you love, or a teary response when you see something sad, shallow breathing. The body's response is actually emotions and feelings. Feelings are the description that we put or the meaning that we put to the experience. This happened, my heart raced, so I feel, excited. Feelings have a cognitive component and they capture that subjective experience that comes from the emotions. I often struggled with this with my children when teachers would say, okay, how do you feel? And you're like, okay, I'm going to have to put a label to something so that I can communicate what I feel instead of just describing, like, yeah, my heart's racing. It's an interesting, different mindset to explore and play with. So, as we're all on our journeys, our unique journeys, to strive to get our needs met, to feel secure, and to nurture our self-worth, everybody's triggers are going to be different. What triggers one person might leave another person completely unaffected. When insecurities arise, they often bring significant emotions, again, typically rooted in unmet childhood needs for approval, belonging, and validation. So when these needs feel threatened, the trigger comes up. We can very quickly revert to those childlike strategies and behaviors like crying, rebelling, or withdrawing. So if I get triggered, I normally cry. I've seen from my ex-husband, he will rebel, and I've seen from my daughter that she will withdraw. So we all do emotional triggers differently. And it comes back to the way that we were brought up and how people either tended to our needs or minimized our needs. So when we're triggered, this childlike response will come up, and it's as if we're seeking someone outside of ourselves to fulfill those needs. This dynamic often plays out in adults who feel powerless. So someone might resort to road rage, again, my ex-husband, um, echoing a toddler's tantrum to assert attention and control. Others, like a woman who consistently places everyone's needs above her own, may fall into people pleasing. That behavior rooted in childhood, that when she expressed her needs, she just felt unsafe or it's just impossible. In moments when you are really raw and really triggered, then all you can really do in that moment is just manage it. You've got to let yourself come back to that neutral state and, yeah, do what you can again to come back to that neutral state. Once that storm has passed, once you have that self awareness, okay, I can breathe, things are calm, then it's time to pick up the empowerment toolkit. That's when you need to reflect on the cause of your reaction, because if you ignore it, the body's going to find a way to bring that up to your attention again. So if you're finding yourself repeatedly triggered, you need to hit pause on life, grab the empowerment toolkit, take yourself through the process, or get coaching to work out, why do you constantly keep attracting in those triggers? Now, I have found from, again, people who sign up for personalized coaching, that the minute that they start to write their goals about wanting that financial freedom, wanting that personal freedom, then their triggers will definitely come to the surface, because it's like the intuition saying, like, yay, let's resolve and dissolve. The fear about running out of money, the fear about people leaving me, all the things. And then when you can come back to that root cause, then you stop attracting in those situations. It's really fascinating to watch. It's just like you, instead of in that lower level of fear, you work through why your buttons get to be pushed, raise your standard, and no longer in the position for those button pushers or for life to push your buttons. It's like, no, I've got this. And when you're feeling better, then you can say yes to opportunities where the money comes in and everything else is completely fine. So again, if you're finding yourself triggered, yep, let that run its course. But then when things calm down, you need to grab hold of the empowerment toolkit to take yourself through the process to work out, why did I attract this, so that you're in that place of empowerment. So that as an adult, you can now meet your own needs that are surfacing. You can now take hold of life and direct it the way that you want it to be. So the process, the ultimate goal, is to integrate that inner child, so they are no longer, holding that steering wheel of life. They're You're now in charge, claiming that personal power and living life through that grounded confidence. Because it's incredibly satisfying to know that, like, that 4-year-old version of you who's having that tantrum, like, no, it's fine. Like, your needs will get met. So I've talked a lot about the process. Some may know it as timeline. I've renamed this particular process the empowerment process. Timeline, for those who know it, you'll recognize it takes you down 4 different avenues. Was the root cause in childhood, in the womb, past lives, or ancestral? And when we're talking about these specific limiting emotions, a lot of them stem from childhood. So this empowerment process is all designed to take you back to heal those wounds from that inner child's perspective. Let's get a sneak peek of how that process works. And don't worry, I'm going to guide you through the process. But for those who just want to know where we're going with this, first we need to identify the problem. So there's a trigger, there's stress. Something's out of balance, and it's like, okay, acknowledge that, identify that. Then we're going to explore the trigger. What specifically triggered you? Was it something that you saw, something you heard, something someone said to yourself, like someone said to yourself, some, something you said to yourself? We need to explore that trigger that created that racing heart or the shallow breathing or the gut feeling or even the pain. We need to go in and explore what's going on with that trigger. Then we're going to look to the past to explore. Have you ever felt like that? Like, is that a pattern you recognize from childhood? And don't worry, logically, you're not supposed to actually know the answer. The logical mind is here in this now moment. It's your unconscious mind that stores the photo album of your life. And so the process gets us to access the unconscious mind to guide us back to when that limiting emotion first held its grip on you. And think about it. Have you ever met a toddler who hasn't had a tantrum or been angry or been demanding that their needs get tended to? We're definitely going to go back to the past and to tame and calm and soothe that inner child where they're feeling like, you know, they're not getting their needs met and where they're handing their power over to others to please soothe me. A lot of the time in that childhood space, people make limiting decisions even in that moment is like, yeah, I can't, I'm helpless, like I can't tend to my own needs. And the process again gets you to release that limiting decision. In the process, we then honor the inner child. Thank you. Thank you for navigating life's challenges the way that you did. We need to acknowledge to that inner child that they're not supposed to actually feel good. If your parents are yelling in the other room, you're not supposed to feel good in that moment. And their way of either retreating or getting loud is like, awesome. What a fabulous strategy to ensure your survival. And thank goodness I don't have to do that anymore. I've got my own phone, I've got my own home, I've got my own car. Like, I don't have to live by other people's rules. But as a little one, wow, did so well with that. And then within the process, we're going to rise above and get a different perspective of how things can be. We're also going to stay true to you and your standards and have a look at what actions you can now take to prioritize what's important to you. And then after that, I'm going to ask you to take one small step into the future to see what's life like now that you're living through the lens of that empowerment. When the process is done, you must celebrate your win. I don't care if this is like going for a walk and picking flowers or going off for a meal or something, but you must do something that tells your unconscious mind that things have changed. And to be able to anchor that, which means to make that imprint and that known that you are at the steering wheel of your life. You are definitely going to make changes. It's no longer about going back to old narratives and old stories. So that's a bit of an overview about the process that we're about to dive into. When we dive into the empowerment process, one of the most revealing exercises is identifying the root cause of your limiting emotions to truly break free and to move forward. So it's essential to explore those childhood triggers that continue to echo into your present. So, as a quick client example, imagine this. You feel that constant drive to prove your worth, pushing yourself to exhaustion, yet no matter what, no matter how hard you try, you feel misunderstood, overwhelmed, and emotionally turbulent under the surface. On the outside, you mask with a fierce independence that you've got this. There's that wall that you've built to shield yourself from the hurt so that the outside world cannot see that you're suffering. It's like, yeah, no, I've got this. Put everybody else's needs ahead of your own. But inside, there's still that ache of anxiety, potentially even fear. Now, if this resonates with you, I want to take this one step further to where the pattern might have begun. So, for instance, somebody there who's people pleasing, exhausted, got the mask up, they look like they've got everything going on, yet there's the undercurrent of resentment and anxiety. You might find yourself going back into childhood, back to a time where you learned that opening up and trusting others led to actually like conditional love. Like there was this exchange where your needs were only met if you people pleased for those around you. So you learned how to adjust yourself to keep the peace, and you learned not to ask for what you wanted because it just came at a cost, because now they're complaining, or now you've made their problems worse, or all those things. And it's those childhood experiences that plant these limiting beliefs that you now operate from in adulthood. And those beliefs that can arise from that, from people pleasing, not allowing yourself to speak up about what you want, the beliefs can show up like, I can only rely on myself, no one else can be trusted, my value depends on how much I achieve or how much I do for others. And another belief that can come up from that experience is, if I let someone in, I'll only be hurt. They just take, and not consider me. So, from that people pleasing space, you can see how the childhood patterns are now coming into the grown up world. And that can build up over time. You think about coming home from school, having to keep the peace, having to do all the things, having to make it all about everybody else. I mean, it's no wonder that people pleasers and empaths go into the healing industry, because they are very well trained to make it about the other person. The undercurrent is that the emotional limitation starts to build in its intensity, and then they start to attract scenarios and people who reinforce this belief. So, as a people pleaser, a natural giver, give, give, give. And the opposite of that, when we live in a world of duality, is to attracting the takers. Now, I'm not saying that the goal here is to become a taker, but I am saying that the goal is to learn how to receive, right? Give and receive. So, through this process, we focus on that stress, the resentment, the anxiety, the limiting emotions that you've been carrying with you. And what we're going to do is we're going to revisit those early events, all of those old memories, and we're going to approach that with curiosity and compassion. The goal is definitely not to relive the pain, but to observe it from a higher perspective. So this shift allows you to see how these patterns were formed, how they ensured your survival back then, but also having a look at how those old patterns do not reflect your self-worth. Instead, it was a response to the environment. So we begin by looking down on that event, trusting the first thing that comes to mind, and to have a look at, okay, I can see that I've walked in the door. I can see that, mum's crying and stressed again. And I can see in my mind's eye, like, yeah, okay, I immediately go into cleaning, because, like, if the house is clean, mum might calm down. And then we have a look at that moment through the process and learn that I have learned that when I pick up on stress, I immediately start to clean, or whatever it is for you. You may do this process and explore, what have I learnt from taking on other people's energy? So again, I walk in the door, I pick up on mum's stress. I take it on board as a thing that I have to now respond to. Instead of going, okay, that's a bit interesting, she's a bit sad, I'm gonna go out and play. Like, that's on her. Don't need to fix. I don't need to automatically, read her energy and solve and do all the things. She's a grown up. She can ask for help. And it doesn't have to be from me. From the process, we can go back and have a look at, what else have you learnt from holding yourself back. And yes, there is definitely some really good things that you've learnt from helping and assisting. But what have you learned from holding yourself back by not doing the things that you wanted to do because you were sacrificing your time to tend to her, as an example? And again, we do the process and explore, as I am no longer a child, what have I learned that allows me to move forward, head held high, shoulders back, leading my own life? So by exploring these answers, you'll transform the narratives, such as, I can't trust anyone, into, I trust myself to choose safe and supportive connections, or replacing, I'm only valuable when I prove myself, to my worth is intrinsic and doesn't depend on others' approval. So this is that heartfelt empowerment. So understanding the roots and the struggles that held you back, recognizing why that's such an automatic program, why that's such a belief, and then starting to rebuild a foundation of trust, self-confidence, and self-authenticity, freeing yourself to create that life that you want. So again, no longer going back to have to clean and people please and check everybody else. It's like, no, I'm going to actually go do that course that I want to do for myself or take that job opportunity. Then I can now have the income I want to be able to create the house that I want, the holiday that I want. I'm talking fast again, but I've seen this with clients. Like the minute that limiting belief shifts or that limiting emotion shifts, it's just like this ripple effect. And I've got to say that a recent client gave me an update to say that we've done all of this work to metaphorically cut the umbilical cord between me and mum, and I've now got my boyfriend, and I've now got a life of my own, and in fact, now mum has a life of her own. She's out of the armchair. She's off on adventures. She's now. So instead of just working on that client, the ripple effect is now mum's better. Relationships start to come in and blossom, friendships. It's just incredible. And I love working with actually mums of kids when she's feeling empowered, the ripple effect, the kids at school, the way their self-confidence shines. It's just incredible. It's not always about the money, it's often those rich relationships and those beautiful memories that we create. So, as we approach the process, I just invite you to come into the space with a sense of curiosity. I invite you to create that comfortable, I sound like my nana, comfortable space. She'd also say vegetable, and I'm like, oh, nana. Anyway, side quest there. But create that comfortable space, that place where you won't be interrupted, and honor you and that inner child and that future you. I don't mind if you do this in the car. A lot of my clients actually do their coaching sessions in their car. It's like their privacy little igloo, like no one can interrupt them. But you could do this in the car. You do this in the sauna. You could do this laying in bed. You could do this on the couch. If you're equipped at active visualization and hypnotherapy, you could even do this going on a walk. But those are the people who are on their healing journey and know themselves well. But again, just being on that place where you can reflect. I ask you to be curious, not judgmental. You know, your analytical mind may want to step in and analyze and, try to put the puzzle pieces together. Like, we can analyze it later. All you want to do is to come into that space to trust the first thing that comes to mind, because the unconscious mind actually communicates softer, but it is the first thing that comes to mind with the unconscious mind. The logical mind is about 4 seconds slower, so it's going to have to think about it to know how to respond. So trust your intuition, trust your unconscious mind with what comes up first, and just go with that. And you can journal and analyze the logical mind later to your heart's content. Why I say this is like when we do the process and say, okay, we're going to go back to the event, and in a moment, not now, I'm going to ask you to drop down into that event. Just trust what comes to mind. It's amazing how it just pops up. Yeah, I've just got to say, like, there's been times I've gone through this process. I've been in the industry now for what feels like 13, 14 years, and my husband's also been in the industry as well. And so it's like, oh, David, this isn't going to work. Like, I'm too revved up. And he's like, no, 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 just go back. And it's like, oh, and then, oh, wow, look at that. You know, back at Nanny's farm, and it's like, oh gosh, I didn't even remember that. So the unconscious mind is very, very, very hungry to show you where the trigger came from, but you've got to trust it like toast popping out of a toaster. It's like, here it is, like, oh wow, my logical mind would not have done that. Anyway, I've waffling on that one. Trust the process. Pay close attention to that first thing that comes to mind. When you're doing this process, trust yourself. avoid those one-word surface level answers. Take time to explore the detail. So if you're exploring stress, you may want to just, or journaling on stress, you may want to explore a little bit deeper. Like, I feel stressed when I'm under pressure to meet deadlines because it makes me feel like I'm doubting my abilities. Like, you may want to just, when you're starting to explore this, ask for more detail to come to the surface, not those one word answers. The only time this process doesn't work is when people question themselves, doubt themselves. Their logical mind has such a strong grip on them. And some may argue that they've switched off their feeling. They know they're anxious, they know life's not working for them, but they've switched off exploring their emotions because the emotions hurt so damn much when they were growing up. Like, no, I'm not going there. So it says a lot. If you're having trouble with this process, there's a there's a surrender to go out of the logical mind and almost drop into the heart space. And if you're one of those people, you may actually just need that personalized coaching. So reach out if needed. I'm here. Seek support. If it's not me, check out a trusted friend, somebody who can help you unpack this. And know that you've got this. Like, your intuition has led you here to have that greater self awareness and growth. So it is definitely time to hold up that key, open the door, and trust that positive change is just around the corner. I have included in the Empowerment Toolkit the Feel Good Blueprint, which is another way of saying the trigger response questionnaire. You don't have to do this, but if you were in my coaching session, we would explore these questions to get the juices flowing to, what is the problem. I actually want you to activate a bit of the problem to tap into it so it's an easier way to navigate the solution. So there's some journaling questions there about tapping into the recent stressful event. What did you see, hear, or say to yourself? What emotions did you feel when you were triggered? Scanning your body. Where did you feel that discomfort? Is it a knee pain, a kick in the guts? What was it? Eye pain, who knows? Who knows? Finger pain, churning guts, whatever. How did your body, scan your body? Where are those feelings? Now, this is an interesting one. It'll help you narrow in on what your body is trying to communicate to you. So, what are the qualities of the discomfort? Like, is it heavy or light? And thinking about fear, we often feel that in the diaphragm kind of area. And is it heavy or light? And it's just like, oh yeah, like we're going in to explore that. I will also ask clients, is it hot or cold? And it just gives me a bit more insight into what's going on, which I'll explore in other courses with you. Some people are quite visual and they want to know, like, this sort of kick in the guts kind of feeling, like what shape or symbol. Some people will get nothing and that's fine. Other people will say, yeah, like it's a roaring fire. Other people will say it's like a blob. Other people will say it's just like heavy chains. The unconscious mind loves to work in symbols. Loves to work in symbols. Like, if you think about, I know you're going to go, what are we talking about here, Claire? If you think about how you communicate to a pet, like a dog, the dog loves symbols and the way that things feel. They don't use logical language. That's my main point. And neither does your unconscious mind. It likes to use pictures, shapes, symbols. And so if you can check in, that kick in the guts or, the pain in your ankles or whatever it is, like, does it take on a shape or a symbol? Is it like lots of pins and needles, or is it a foggy cloud? I've heard it all. Awesome. The unconscious mind's like, oh, finally, you're speaking my language. And so once we've got all of that, what's the trigger? How does it make you feel? I'm just going to briefly scan back in the past. Is there a similar pattern playing out in the past? And if so, how did you feel back then? When you were triggered, how did you respond back then? And when you were triggered and responding, like, what was the outcome that you wanted? Did you want mum to slow down? Did you want to be heard? Did you want people to back off? And this again just gives you more insights into where we're going with this process. That then leads you into pressing play on the process, which I'm not going to do here. I'm going to put that as a separate link. And that process is just like that yummy time for just for you. So do that process. And then there's an opportunity afterwards to reflect and journal if you want. I'm not the journaling type. I will probably call a friend or talk to David or, draw it out sometimes. I'm not the journaling type. But if you are, then you may want to explore, okay, cool. What experience did you have doing the process? Like, where did you go back to? What was the root cause of the limiting emotion? Who was involved? What lessons did you learn about, holding on to other people's energy or how you limited yourself? And with this new perspective, what are the new ways forward? And of course, what's that one nice thing you can do for yourself now that the process is finished? In a coaching session, if we went in really deep with this type of process, I'm going to ask the client to definitely not go into a hectic meeting. You need to give your unconscious mind some time to integrate and process. And that's like going for a walk, having a glass of water, a meal, maybe a massage. Massage and body work hand in hand with this type of process. We do this process to clear it out of your body, out of your mind and out of your soul. Like it's like that freeing the energy. And the body is so used to holding onto the tension. You can imagine if you've been walking around restricting your energy, making yourself smaller, shoulders hunched in, muscles tight, your body will love then heading off to massage, chiro, myotherapist, whatever your body work is. Yeah, get the body moving, get things shifting because it takes time for the physical body to catch up to the changes. So you definitely want to ground yourself. You may want to discuss and share or not, completely up to you. And you want to start to embrace the future pacing of like, how do you want life to be? The tricky thing here now, I say tricky thing, but the fun thing now is to catch yourself. If you start to go into old negative patterns, you need to interrupt that thought pattern and start to bring in those new lessons and the new choices. It's if you keep spiraling back into old patterns, then that's no longer like the mind taking over. You've got to interrupt and move forward with what you're going to do differently. You're taking hold of the steering wheel of life. What's something that you can do differently to interrupt? Now, I would imagine that as you do this process for all of the triggers, that you'll start to feel a lot lighter. You'll start to actually be able to do this process without needing me in the background. But for now, it would be like, yeah, okay, notice the trigger, do the empowerment process, get the lessons, make new choices. And anytime that a trigger does come up, it's like, ooh, it's just an invitation to come back to building my self-worth, my self-confidence, ready for that new resolution, that new future me. So this is, as I said right at the beginning, this process is taught all over the world. It is incredible how quickly it can shift. And there's no magic in this. This is working with the way that your mind works. Your mind, when it's stressed, is wanting closure. That's what we're giving it. And that way, you're now free to make new choices. So if you have any questions, please reach out to me. I love, love, love hearing the updates and how life has changed very quickly when you start to really acknowledge what your body and your mind is telling you. And it's just like manifesting in the most wonderful life that you can dream of. I'm Claire Chancellor from Be Your Purpose Coaching, and I really look forward to talking to you soon. Bye, guys.